Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second student and community listening event for our strategic planning process. To my knowledge, we have 4 individuals that are joining us via YouTube Live, and we also have some members of LCC that have joined us via WebEx. So thank you to everyone for your participation. It is certainly appreciated, especially to some of our employees who have participated in every single strategic planning session. That has not gone without notice, so I want to send a special thank you for them. And to everyone that's on YouTube Live, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your participation. You are also welcome to join us here in this WebEx if you would like to make any public statements. If you do not wish to make public statements, you can go ahead and enter anything that you like to share with us via the chat box on the YouTube live stream. So we invite you to do that. And then also you can email us at strategicplan@lcc.edu. That's strategicplan@lcc.edu. What I'd like to do is be mindful of everybody's time and respectful to everyone that has joined us right here at 10 a.m. So we will go ahead and we will start with an opening remarks from our president, Steve Robinson. So Dr. Robinson, can you provide a welcome?
Yes, Dr. Samuel, thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. For many of you, welcome back to some more great input sessions for strategic planning. I want to make a couple of framing comments about why we're doing this and thank you for being here. We're engaging in what is called a refresh of our strategic plan. You'll hear more about that in a minute. But the most important thing about today is for us to be a good listener and to provide an opportunity for folks to make contributions to the process that we are developing for the future. And being available and listening is really the centerpiece. There's also, as Dr. Samuel will tell you, a way for you to provide input outside of a session like this by sending us an email. So the most important message I have this morning is thank you for taking some time. And also thank you to all our LCC team members who continue to attend these sessions and make them meaningful and robust. So thank you, everyone. I know we'll have a great session today.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. I appreciate those remarks. And thank you, Andrea, for the round of applause. So I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And so what I'd like to do is just go ahead and get started. I think as Dr. Robinson said, the most important thing is that we hear from the community. So while I'd like to provide some context for why we're here, I'd like to also make sure that we give you some background before we start asking you to provide your feedback. So in terms of our strategic plan, we have 6 focus areas, and they're listed here for you: community engagement, leadership culture and communications, engaged learning and student success, competitiveness and innovation, resource management and fiscal responsibility, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is highlighted, and that is because that is our newest focus area. And it's something that, even though it's a separate focus area, we're trying to be mindful of diversity, equity, and inclusion within all of our focus areas. In terms of strategic planning, it's important for you to know why we're doing this. You know, the strategic plan tells a story of who we are, where we are at this moment in time, and where we aspire to be. So that's really important. And in order to get there, what we want to focus on today is strategic issues. We want to focus on those changes or challenges that exist today that affect higher education, our mission, academic programs, student services, our employees, our students, our revenue sources, and our external stakeholders. All those things are important to us. And to give you a better look at that, strategic issues could be, COVID-19 is something that we're all dealing with. So that's a strategic issue. And we're going to have to make sure that our services, that our facilities, that everything that we're doing on campus is equipped to deal with the impact of COVID-19 and making sure that our students are safe and making sure that we have different methods of learning and teaching, teaching and learning. So that's going to be something that's going to impact us today and in the future. But also we have diversity. equity, inclusion, cybersecurity, health and safety, competition, facility utilization. All these things are strategic issues that we really need to be mindful of as we start to think about where we want to be in our future. So with that, I'd like to start with our first focus area, which is community engagement. And here's our definition. And I won't read the whole thing to you, but what I really want to focus on is mutually beneficial relationships with our community. And that's part of why we're doing what we're doing here today. And even if you say that after this meeting, you have additional things that you like to share with the college, you can send an email to strategicplan@lcc.edu about any of these focus areas that we're going over today. So again, community engagement is really us trying to make sure that we have mutually beneficial relationships with you, our student and communities. So the questions that I have for this group are listed here. I will read them, and as I read them, I challenge you to think about your answers to these questions, understanding that there are no right or wrong answers. What we're trying to do is be strategic and be innovative, and so diversity of thought is important. So I encourage you, if you have any thoughts on any of these questions, that you go ahead and make your thoughts known. So in terms of this particular focus area, community engagement, here's some questions for you. First, how can we ensure that degree and certificate seeking students understand that they belong here at LCC? How can we increase enrollment at LCC in general and or for specific programs? Is the college viewed as a place where one can receive a valuable and quality education? If this is not our current reputation, then how can we change our reputation? How can we build upon and strengthen existing relationships with our legislative partners? These are all things that are important for us when we talk about community engagement. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for any feedback that you may have. And if you'd like to speak, what you can do, if you're on WebEx, you can go ahead and put a comment in there saying, I have a comment. If you are a part of the YouTube stream, you can put your question or comment into the chat on the YouTube screen, and we will have someone read it. It looks like I have a comment. So for the first person that would like to comment, can you unmute yourself and go ahead and make a comment, please?
I think that's me. Hi, I'm Michelle Strauss. I'm the Executive Director of the Capital Area College Access Network, and I am a regular community partner, and I'm grateful to have a chance to talk with all of you. I just wanted to tell you I was actually just in a session where West Campus was offering a virtual tour for students who have disabilities. So these are kids who have an IEP or 504. And oftentimes they are not really seen as college going, and they certainly have additional barriers to accessing college. And I just wanted to thank LCC for taking the time the past few years to really help us develop this pipeline for students, and encourage you to continue to think outside the box about not only this population, but all of our underrepresented young people in the community, students of color, low-income students, and even our returning adults, to be able to understand their unique needs and barriers that they are trying to address, particularly right now during COVID. And I think the thing that has concerned me in the last year is that just because a student has a scholarship, just because a student can get into a college, just because, you know, they might have filled out the FAFSA, doesn't mean that they are coming to college. And I saw a quote this morning in an article that I was reading, and the student said, right now it's just not the time. And I think we need to be ready for them when it is the time, but I also think we need to think about how we can double back with those young people and adults and say, you may not think it's the time, but we have all the wraparound services available to help support you to make it the time for you to come to school now. So,
right. Those are great. Yeah, those are great comments, Michelle. Thank you so much for being here with us, and thank you for sharing your comments, because everything that you said is very important. And part of why we like to hear from people is because we want to make sure that we're doing our best to serve our students in our community, but we know that there are gaps and we know that there are areas that we can improve on. So thank you for pointing that out. I know one thing that we have talked about is doing more for our students that are on the autism spectrum. And so we're really trying to think and make sure that we cover all the students that want to come to the college. So thank you so much for those comments. Do we have any other comments that anybody would like to share? Okay. Well, again, I'd like to remind everybody that if you do have comments about strategic planning and the focus area of community engagement, you can send an email to strategicplan@lcc.edu and we can capture your thoughts that way. So what I'll do is I'll go to our next focus area, engage learning and student success. And so first, let's take a look at engaged learning. When we talk about engaged learning, we are attempting to provide excellent quality education. We want our students to be an active participant in meeting their educational and career goals. And so we're hoping that through the experience of being here, our students will learn how to connect their education to their career objectives. And this is really important. We want to make sure that within our classrooms, we have meaningful discussions. We want to make sure that we have opportunities for learning experiences that are beneficial and can transfer over into when our students are in the work environment. In terms of student success, we understand that student success means different things to each student. So we're doing our best to be mindful of that. Some of our students are coming here because they just want to increase their skills in a particular area. And then we have other students who are coming and they want to receive a certificate. And then others are coming because they want to transfer to a university. And it doesn't matter to us what the goal is. We just want to help them be successful in meeting those goals. So when we talk about student success, we're looking at the whole picture. Where does the student really want to be at the end of their relationship with Lansing Community College? So let's keep these things in mind as we take a look at these questions. So first, how can we ensure that our coursework is engaging and students have a positive learning experience? How can we positively impact educational outcomes for all LCC students through diversity, equity, and inclusion? The college provides academic advising, success coach services, tutoring, financial aid, consulting, work opportunities, and many other services to our students. Are there any service gaps? And this is important. And this is why we like to reach out to the community, because we're doing our best to provide what we consider wraparound services. But is there anything that we're missing? If there's any comments from YouTube, definitely let us know, the people that are monitoring YouTube. I see that Michelle is saying a health center. Michelle, did you want to expound on what you would think should be a part of that health center? I think that's been a conversation in the past. And I think that sometimes it has a little bit to do with being able to prioritize, and there's a time and season for everything. But I'd like to know what your interest would be in a health center. What would you envision?
Well, I think that it would be relatively easy to partner, for example, with the Ingham County Health Department, which actually runs school-based health centers for some of our high schools, to maybe have either a close proximity health center or an on-site health center where we can meet the needs of the students and the employees and faculty of the college, whether it be now, of course, obtaining vaccines, but you have a great dental hygiene program and people don't know that it's available for them to come in and seek dental care. You could add some health components, and it might also be a great place for your students to get some practical experience as they continue their education. So there are, in most college campuses, or university campuses, of course, there are student health centers because they live on campus. You don't have that, but if you have working people and certainly student parents who don't have time, if they're working full time, they're going to school full time, to get to, the doctor very easily, and this would make it more accessible to them.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. And the most familiar I am with the healthcare center on campus would be at Michigan State University. They do have a healthcare center on campus, and it's pretty full service. So thank you for that. And I see I have a comment from Dean Rhonda Miller, our Dean of Student Affairs. Dean Miller?
Good morning. I just wanted to circle back to the engagement component of the first question and wanted to just let the community know and anybody who is listening and may not be aware of our intentional recruitment cycle. We want to start with engagement in the very beginning as we begin to have conversations with students about considering LCC. And that means that we drill down on what the student is looking for, what is the end in mind. So we start with the end in mind. What does the student want to accomplish, and try to provide those resources early on in the recruitment cycle. That also involves having career services interface with the students so we can talk about career opportunities, the labor market, degrees, all of that. So students can come in well informed with where they're trying to get and how we can support them. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the community, that we really are working on being very intentional with students as they begin looking at LCC and work with them through the enrollment and registration process. And then we give a warm handoff to the academic side.
Thank you, Dean Miller. I appreciate that. And I always like the concept of the warm handoff. I think we, as you said, we try to do everything that we can. And I appreciate just really the interest in the student and the goals of the student and the whole student. And with our wraparound services, we really are trying to take care of all those needs that we know students have that, Maslow talked about. We try to look at that so that their needs are met so that they can actually perform well in school. So thank you so much for that comment. And thank you, Michelle, for the comments about the health center. So with that, I will go ahead and go to our next focus area. This area is leadership, culture, and communication. So there's 3 parts. When we talk about leadership, we're talking about the college being nationally recognized and award winning. And this is really important. We try to be excellent in everything that we do. And when we find, that we know that we are that we excel in a particular area, we're looking for national recognition. And thankfully, this college has been recognized in various ways. There's some recognition that we applied for, and there's other recognition that that another organization saw that, hey, LCC is doing great, so we think that they're one of the best colleges in the nation. And those are things that we didn't seek, but because of the work that we do, it came to us. So I think that's important. And then in terms of culture, this is equally important. When we talk about culture, we want a culture here that embraces diversity, equity, inclusion, collaboration, transparency, and continuous improvement. And hopefully even these listening sessions kind of show that we are looking for collaboration, that we're looking to continually improve, and we're looking to be transparent so that our community and our students know what we're working on right now and what direction we're looking to go in so that they can participate in the best way that fits them. And in terms of communication, this is something that we've been working on and we'll continue to work on every year, is really making sure that we have effective two-way communication with our employees, students, and community. And we will continue to do that. One of the things that we did with this listening session is we made sure that we had radio spots out there to advertise for this. We had our webpage, we did a lot of social media things, and then we did personal invitations to different members of the community. And so we're just learning different ways to try to communicate with our target audiences, and we'll continue to evolve and get better where that's concerned. And we're always looking for community input in terms of how we can do all these things better. So here are 3 questions for you. First, are we communicating with our community and students in effective ways? Are there additional methods of communication that would be helpful? Do our current marketing efforts help you understand the educational opportunities that are available at LCC? How can we better serve the community through our non-credit community education programs? And that's a really important. And the reason why we wanted this question here is because we want to make sure that the community understands about our non-credit community education programs that are available. Do we have any comments on these questions or any responses? Seeing none, I'd like to have our Dean of Community Education Workforce Development, Bo Garcia. Bo, if you can share some information on our non-credit community education programs, because I think that's pretty important. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people are not aware of. Anything you want to share on that?
Sorry, you caught me printing something. So just give it a second till it stops. Yeah, so our we have a very robust non-credit unit. It consists of course, community education, youth and adult programming, continuing education, corporate training, our small business development center. They all serve a very diverse demographic, from youth, 6, 7, 8-year-olds to 60, 70, 80-year-olds in adult education. Those who are unemployed, underemployed, those who are looking to create a small business, expand their small business, or may be facing some type of a crisis and need some assistance navigating that crisis management situation. So the division is very, very robust. We typically see somewhere around 7,000 workforce development related individuals annually, but throughout the entire division, we're well over typically 12,000 or so, and that includes our extension centers at East and Howell. So it's business development, workforce development, and community development.
Right. Thank you, Dean Garcia. I think that's really important. And I can say for myself, I have benefited from having my children participate in the services over at East Campus with some of those community programs. And they really are great programs. And so it's something that I think our community should really look into. And so are there any questions for Bo or any comments with respect to this particular focus area, leadership, culture, and communication? Okay, well, with that, I'll go to the next focus area, but I'd like to continue to remind you that if you think of something after this point, you can certainly send an email to strategicplan@lcc.edu. So the next area is competitiveness and innovation. And here, LCC would like to create an environment for innovative, intelligent risk-taking and organizational agility through the practice of vetting and prioritizing ideas to be transformed into new, improved services or processes. And this is important because this is really strategic planning. It's really being thoughtful about our future. And that's what we're looking to do. So here are some questions that we have for you. How do we ensure that we provide an educational experience that is highly valuable in the eyes of our students, employers, and community stakeholders? How do we optimize our educational delivery while reducing non-essential courses, thereby increasing our students' ability to enter the workforce and/or experience their educational and sight vision sooner? What can LCC do to separate ourselves from other institutions and for-profit companies that provide educational services? These are some very, very important questions because if you look at the higher education industry or the secondary education industry, what you will see is that the pool of options continues to get bigger and bigger every year. And when people have options, that obviously increases their choice. And so when a person decides to go to a community college, a university, or a for-profit center to learn a particular craft, they have to be very thoughtful because they have choices. And so for us, as one of those institutions that are delivering this service, we have to be mindful of the fact that there is a choice, that students have a choice. And because the choice, they have more options today than they've ever had before, we need to be mindful of that. Students can take a whole course and get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or a master's degree all online nowadays. So what do we do about that? How do we stand out amongst the crowd How do we continue to be innovative in this type of environment? How do we attract new students? How do we get the word out that LCC is the place to be? You know, how do we communicate? How do we market what we do? Are there any comments that anyone has on these things? Well, if not, what I'd like to do is ask Bruce Mackley, our marketing director, to give some insight into where we are currently marketing the college and what we're doing. If you could just provide some brief comments with respect to that, Bruce.
I'd love to. Thank you, Sandy. Well, we're doing practically everything, every media tool at hand. We have comprehensive online campaigns running with You Belong Here, heavily targeted toward various demographics. Something that's coming up will be for PLA. We're developing targeting tactics for veterans and for active military folks. I've had talks with Andrew Cosgrove, and that's pretty exciting too. Smart TV, we're doing connected TV stuff, pre-roll and YouTube. We do direct mail. We do print ads. We have an ongoing contract with City Pulse and M3 for the 517 magazine, as well as very, very robust outdoor contracts with both Adams and Crossroads Digital Marketing, and that's everybody. Adams is 95% of the market. Crossroads is the other 5%. So we have it blanketed, and we're pushing social media as well. I mean, I don't know if you've seen some of our Instagram and some of our Facebook posts, dialing in and using the You Belong Here campaign, multi-purposing it toward more specific things like prior learning. You know, and there are programmatic things as well that we can purpose that towards. We recently created 3 television commercials. I think that comment came up in the last meeting, 30-second spots that we did internally here. We storyboarded them, wrote them, scripted them, and Media Services animated them. And we took that route because we couldn't, with a safety protocol, we couldn't, it wouldn't have been wise to have students in to film them. And it just turned into more trouble than it was worth. And I hope to return to that because we think the You Belong Here campaign deserves real students, getting some real faces and some real testimonials up there. For the meantime, though, we're using animations, and those seem to be going over pretty well. The 4th one in the pipeline that's being developed right now is for prior learning and for our 4 areas of delivery to kind of draw a deeper understanding of ORT. I know Sally has mentioned some confusion with students, so that'll help clarify that on that end.
So Bruce, ORT, online real time?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
so I just wanted to say that for, you know,
Yeah.
any community member that didn't know what we were talking about. So thank you so much for that. I think it is important, and it's an example of how COVID-19 as a strategic issue that we're facing, how we've had to do some things differently in order to make sure that we're still doing what we do, but we're doing it in a way that is conscious of what's happening in the world. And we're doing it in a way that is people first, it's student first, it's very thoughtful in making sure that we're not putting people in environments that they would be uncomfortable in because we want to do something specific. So understanding that sometimes things that are happening around us, things that are strategic issues that we have zero control over, we have to adapt. And that's what we did with our marketing campaign. So thank you, Bruce, for giving us that information.
My
Are there
pleasure.
Thanks. Are there any other comments on this focus area before I move to the next one? Okay, seeing none, I'll just remind everyone that you can always send your remarks to strategicplan@lcc.edu. And also I'll let you know that when you go to the website where you receive this invitation for the listening session, all of the questions that I'm presenting to you, they are actually posted on that website. And so if you want to go back to a particular focus area and provide feedback, you have the option to do so. So our next focus area is our newest one, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's very important for us to define the three because they're three different things. So first, diversity. It refers to the variety of human differences and personal experiences, values, and world views that arise from cultural and circumstance differences. And that's important. So for us, diversity, the reason why we're even, doing the community sessions is because we respect diversity of thought and we like to hear from different people. And then equity. Equity refers to the ongoing practice of recognizing and eliminating barriers and bias within procedures, processes, and distribution of resources in a structure or system. And so if you look at the photograph that's on this slide, it really kind of is one of the best pictures that we can present where it comes to equity to kind of help people understand that, as you see in the first picture, everyone has the same box to stand on. But the interesting thing is that the third person, not being tall enough, even though they have exactly the same box that everyone else, it doesn't provide them an opportunity to share in that experience. So we really want to pay attention to the second box that's there where you can clearly see that it's more equitable for the person that requires more to see to make sure that they have more boxes so that they can see. So hopefully you'll keep that picture in mind when we talk about equity. When we go to inclusion, inclusion refers to the act of creating safe and welcoming environments in which every person feels invited, accepted, respected, supported, and valued to participate fully. And that's very important. And hopefully that's something that you see with our You Belong Here campaign, because we really are promoting the importance of inclusion as one of our values at the college. So here are the questions that I have for you related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which we simply refer to as DEI. First question, how do we ensure that DEI is embedded and integrated in every aspect of the college? How can we attract a diverse student and employee body? How can we foster a workplace culture of inclusivity through events, communication, employee and student engagement, and staff recognition? How can we proactively highlight and engage students and employees in cultural competency and transform learning experiences to positively impact the greater society? So these are very interesting questions because we're talking about not just their experience while they're here at Lansing Community College, we're talking about people that value diversity, equity, and inclusion and go out into the world and impact the greater society. So are there any thoughts that you have on diversity, equity, and inclusion? I would add to here also, as employees, as students, as community members, do you feel welcome on our campus?
Selena, jump in?
Yes, please do.
Having heard earlier mention of something very important, students on the autism spectrum and all other students with psychological challenges, there was some talk pre-COVID, and I know this will be challenging as we eventually move back on campus. There was talk of a student-to-student peer support program being developed to help students on the spectrum. And I know I've had a student a couple of times in class whose behavior I easily handled because of my many years of experience and being in the field of psychology. But this student had been in a lot of trouble with some other faculty who considered her behavior unacceptable, and they were not understanding of her circumstances. But a student there to support her as a peer would have been an extraordinary advantage in a case of instructors who had more difficulty dealing with a student whose challenges were beyond their personal control. And she was a brilliant student. I'll share a funny story. I got mad at her in class one day, and I almost told her to shut up. And she sat there quietly and finally raised her hand and said, "Are you going to report me to Student Judicial Affairs?" And I said, "No, of course not. I will never report you. I can handle it." And she sat for a minute and then she said, "Well, will you report me if I plagiarize my paper?" And the whole class laughed. And I said, "Of course I'll report you for that." But as the class got used to me interacting with this student and accepting her for who she was, eventually another student did a presentation on supporting their younger sibling with Down syndrome. And she then said she worked with some friends of hers who were also on the spectrum like her. And it opened up the whole class's view of, these are wonderful people seeking an education just like them, facing different challenges, although many of our students face their own challenges. So I know it'll be difficult moving forward, but developing peer-to-peer support programs, I think, is a wonderful way to not only make students feel included, but to help other students grow and understand and realize that we're all in this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kellen. I think those are some excellent comments. I will say that I've been listening in on a lot of our strategic planning brainstorming sessions, and the comment about a peer-to-peer program did come up. So this is my second time hearing that. But I will say that our provost may have more information on any programs that we currently have with respect to peer-to-peer mentoring. I don't know, Dr. Welch, would you like to provide any feedback or any thoughts on what we just heard?
In terms of the mentoring aspect, we have more that I know of on the academic side in terms of tutoring. So the Learning Common uses learning assistants to help students in their classrooms. They're also embedded in the classrooms to help students feel more comfortable about getting tutoring. I would also hand this off to Dean Miller, who might be able to talk a little bit more specifically about peer mentoring within student organizations or groups in her area. But the biggest peer-to-peer mentoring on the academic side is through the Learning Commons and is through embedded academic support in terms of peers being embedded in the classroom, but also peers doing tutoring with students in the Learning Commons space.
Thank you, Dr. Welch. Dean Miller, would you like to expound on that?
I will just add that after a C3R meeting, we had a conversation with an outside community agency about building a peer support program for students with autism. And we were actively pursuing that, and COVID just put it on the side burner. So we will continue to try to build infrastructure in student affairs to address that issue so that we could provide some sort of support. But again, COVID has just kind of changed the dynamics for us at the moment.
Thank you, Dean Miller. So it does sound like this is something that we are actively working on, and I appreciate all of that feedback. I do have a comment from Dr. Glasgow. If you would like to share your comment, Dr. Glasgow.
Yes, as a community member, since I'm on vacation today, that was for Dr. Robinson's benefit. And Michelle Strauss may want to speak to this as well, because she is the co-leader of our Student Transition Action Team. And we are definitely looking at how we can use the LINK model, which is used in high school primarily, to assist our students. And since we're starting with students on the autism spectrum, we are looking at the possibility of using student employee positions that we haven't filled to be trained and serve as peer mentors. So we're starting with a small project in May, and we do have student affairs representatives from this Center for Student Access involved in our pilot. And our hope is that we will be able to take that pilot and add to that pilot to include the peer mentoring piece. So we have K-12 involved on that team, and there is much, much more to come.
Thank you, Dr. Glasgow. That's exciting. I know you mentioned that Michelle may have additional comments. So Michelle, if you have additional comments that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them.
Thanks, Selena. Thanks, Dr. Glasgow, for talking a little bit about some of our collaborative work that we're doing. We have been building on a model that we've designed through the Coalition for Career and College Readiness over the past few years to try and really create that warm handoff, as Rhonda Miller talked about earlier, between the high school K-12 team, whether that be the guidance counselor, or in this case for this event, it's going to be the special education transition team, with the college and the wraparound services that the college offers. So certainly the Center for Student Access and all of the success programs that are embedded at LCC are the people that our K-12 partners are handing off to at the college. And I think as we go forward, the thing that's been really wonderful about the partnership in C3R is that we have K-12 and community partners, and certainly the college and other university partners all around the table, sharing best practices, sharing data, and learning from one another. And one of the things that I've learned over the last year is that there's a growing network of colleges and universities across the country that are specifically focused on autism. And so I've taken some time in our work to understand what types of research there is out there, because this is such a new area. And we've discovered that there really are very few community colleges that lead in this space. And so obviously we would want to work with those that are, but some of the things that we're talking about may be fairly new and innovative and don't actually have any research behind them yet. So for LCC to be a leader in that and to be able to document our experience and gather some data, I think will be helpful, certainly for our own students in our own community, but also in really continuing to make LCC seen as a leader across the country. Thanks.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. We appreciate your comments, and we are thankful for your collaboration. So thank you for that. And with that, I will move to our next focus area, but I'll continue to remind you that if you have any thoughts on any of these focus areas, you can send an email to strategicplan@lcc.edu. So our next focus area is resource management and fiscal responsibility. And when we talk about resource management, we're looking at financial, human, and physical resources. And that's important because a lot of times when people think about resources, they really are looking at finances. But we believe that human resources are our most valuable resources. And we also like to include physical resources because we're talking about our facilities that we use to serve our community and our students. So we have to cover all of those. And the questions that I have for you here are, how can we ensure that all students receive a positive return on their educational investment? How should financial data impact our service and program offerings? And how can we celebrate our students in a meaningful way? So the first question about students receiving a positive return on their educational investment. So we're really looking at making sure that the programs that we have, that they're relevant to the marketplace, so that when our students graduate, they have gainful employment, and that they're able to pay back any student loans if they have those. So that's really important to us. And then in terms of celebrating our students in a meaningful way, that's also important. We do so many things to try to make sure that we acknowledge the achievements of our students. We try to support them during important times like finals frenzy and right at the very beginning of the semester with different ways. And we have so many programs geared towards helping our students and making sure that regardless of what their special need may be, that we understand it and that we're there to help them and make sure they have the resources that they need to be successful, understanding that what one student needs may be different than what another student needs to be successful. So are there any questions about resource management, and fiscal responsibility, and how that impacts our students? Or are there any thoughts to any of the questions that are presented here? Well, to start the dialogue, I'm going to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Don Wilski, to provide some comments on just recent activity with the federal government and how we've been able to take advantage of that to help our students from a financial perspective. Don?
Thank you, Selena. Yes, with the stimulus packages that have been passed and signed by the federal government, we have been able to award a significant amount of aid to students to help them make their way through financially the pandemic. We're currently working on another round of those awards, and we'll continue to do so as long as those funds are available from the federal government. Currently, the House in DC has passed the third stimulus package. Included in that is $39 billion for higher education, $36 billion specifically for public colleges and universities. At this point, it hasn't passed and been signed into law, but one of the criteria that's included in the legislation is that half of the money that the college would receive would be directly dispersed to students. And when we do that, we concentrate on those students that are, I guess I'll call it the neediest of the needy. And so we want to make sure that we reach out to all of our students that we have the opportunity to assist them during this very difficult financial time.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate that. And I always like for the community to be familiar with the fact that the college provides multiple scholarships for our students throughout the year, every year. And it's something that we've always done. And we've always sought to make sure that if there's any way that we can make the financial burden or cost of going to school be a little bit less for students, then we do what we can. So thank you for those comments. Are there any other comments or responses to these questions that you see here? All right, if not, what I'd like to do is just remind you again that you can go to strategicplan@lcc.edu. You can send an email to that address, and if you would like to share any additional concerns with us. And again, the website that you went to for the link to participate in this session, that you can go back to that website. All the questions that I presented here are on that website, and you can go back to them and refer to them as you think about whether you want to respond and send some thoughts to strategicplan@lcc.edu. We will be collecting responses through close of business on March 12th. And the reason that we're doing that is because we need to consolidate the information that we receive from the community with the information that we receive from our employees with respect to ideas and suggestions of things that we need to do in the future. So that's something that we really want to make sure that people understand, that there's an opportunity to continue to provide feedback. And so what I'd like to do now, because we've gone over all the questions that I have, if there are any questions that I didn't present or any comments that anyone wants to make before I turn it over to our wonderful president, Dr. Robinson, please let me know now by putting something in the chat. All right, well, seeing none, I do want to thank everybody that participated via WebEx. And I know that we had some people that are watching our YouTube live stream. And I also want to thank them for their time and attention. And I want to thank every employee at LCC and every community member for your participation. And I just encourage you to continue. As I said, through March 12th, any additional ideas you have, you can send to strategicplan@lcc.edu. And with that, I will turn it over to our visionary leader, Dr. Steve Robinson. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you, Dr. Samuel. I want to thank all of the LCC team members who participated in this session and our wonderful community partners for being here. The strategic plan for our college is really a path forward, a direction forward, and it begins with us listening in sessions like this. And I really appreciate the input both from our internal community and from the external community. There were great ideas contributed today. Please stay tuned for future developments as we move forward, because these sessions really do help inform what we're going to finalize as a strategic plan that we'll take to our Board of Trustees and will help us chart a path forward. So on a beautiful sunny Friday, it's very, very generous of you to contribute your time and your ideas. We appreciate it very much. And stay connected with us as we move forward, because we value your input. We want to hear you, and we hope that when you see the completed plan, you'll feel that you had some influence on how it turned out. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson, and everyone have a great weekend. We appreciate you. Thank you for your time.